Hey everybody, and welcome back to Be Like Christ for a new Bible study, and we're starting a new book today, Leviticus. Now, if you don't know anything about Leviticus, it kind of has a bad reputation of being a difficult book to get through, to read through, and to study through. It's a book where a lot of people's daily Bible reading kind of falls by the wayside, and the reason for that is because it's a different book in the sense that it is a record of the instructions that God gave to his people, the Israelites, about how he wanted them to live, how he wanted them to worship, and it's very detailed. Very, very detailed. A lot of people lose interest as they're reading through all of these details and wondering, how on earth does this relate to me? But as we go through this study, I promise that we will do our best to try to figure out how these things relate to us. And the truth is that if you understand the book of Leviticus and all that's going on there, it really deepens your understanding of the New Testament and many concepts that are talked about later on in the Old Testament and then into the New Testament. So keep that in mind. As you know, some of the studies are a little difficult to get through. Just know that if you can retain any bit of this, it will help you later on in your study. So we have new handouts. All these PDFs that you're seeing up on the screen are available to download for free on our website at tobelikechrist.com. And we've got Genesis done and Exodus done, and Matthew, Luke, Acts, and James, and a bunch of other books. So go out there and check those out. Okay. As we always try to do, let's answer our questions of when, what, who, or when, what, when, where, and why. That's what I was trying to say. Although we have a little bit of a change to our PDFs in this study. I took out the characters and the geographic section, or the where section, because in Leviticus, there's just not a whole lot of that. We're not really going to be talking about a bunch of characters. We're not going to be talking about a bunch of locations like in a lot of the other books. So I've replaced those sections with a definition section that will introduce us to terms that maybe modern readers aren't particularly familiar with. And then I've added more space for the outline and moved the application section over to the first page. So I'm sorry about all the introduction information, but we kind of just have to get through that so that we can progress through the study. And from now on, these should be about 5 minutes total in length. When did the events of Leviticus chapter 1 take place? Well, Leviticus picks up right where Exodus left off. The children of Israel are going through the wilderness. They've been camped at Mount Sinai, and they're on their way to the promised land, which was the Canaan land. God had promised to give them that land as their inheritance. According to Leviticus chapter 8 and the end of Exodus, which we just studied through, the tabernacle, or the special tent where God's presence dwelt among his people, that had already been erected. And you can see a diagram of the tabernacle over on the second page underneath our outline. Moving on now into our definition section, the first word that I want to define is the word crop, C-R-O-P. And we're going to read about a bird's crop a little bit later on in this chapter. A bird's crop is a small muscular pouch that's located on the front of their neck, underneath their beak, and it's used for storing food. So there's your bird anatomy tip for the day. And then another bird fact, a turtle dove is the next word that we want to define. A turtle dove is a small species of dove which gets its name from the sound that it makes, its call. Apparently it sounds like a turtle. They average about 140 grams in weight, so they're smaller than like the common pigeon that you see in a lot of cities around the world, or the mourning dove that we have a lot of in the United States. So then moving over to our second page and our outline, don't worry, we'll come back to our application. In our first section of the chapter, verses 1 through 2, God instructs Moses on burnt sacrifices. So God called Moses to the tabernacle, or to the tent of meeting, as it's called, and he gave him instructions for how the Israelites were supposed to offer sacrifices. They could either bring an offering from their herd or from their flock. And we'll talk about the specifics of each of those in the next couple sections. So this chapter is about how to offer sacrifices. The rest of the chapter is going to explain the specifics depending on which animal was brought to be sacrificed. Verses 3 through 9, our next section, instructions for offering oxen. So if an Israelite wanted to offer an ox to the Lord, he was to bring a male ox without blemish, without any like handicaps or, blind in one eye or something like that. He was supposed to bring it to the entrance of the tabernacle. After placing his hand on the ox's head, the sacrificer was supposed to kill the animal. The priest were then to take the ox blood and to throw it against the side of the bronze altar. Then the one offering the animal was to skin it and to cut it in pieces. After washing the entrails and the legs, yes, I told you there's going to be a lot of detail, the pieces were to be arranged on wood on the altar and then burned. And the offering was said to go up to heaven as a, quote, pleasing aroma to the Lord. All right, now that you know how to offer an ox in the tabernacle, let's talk about sheep and goats. This is verses 10 through 13. If an Israelite man wanted to offer a goat or a sheep, he was to bring the animal to the tabernacle and kill it on the north side of the bronze altar. The priests were to take the blood and to throw it against the side of the altar, just like with the ox. The animal was then to be chopped into pieces, and after its legs and its entrails were washed, burned with wood on the altar as a, quote, food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Oh, but we're not done. We've got one more. What if you wanted to offer a bird? Verses 14 through 17 will explain the details to you. So in addition to goats, sheep, and oxen, the Israelites could offer turtle doves and pigeons. If a bird offering was brought to the priests were to wring off the bird's head and drain its blood on the side of the altar. These priests must have been like master butchers and animal killers. The bird's crop, remember that's that muscular pouch in front of its neck that it uses to store food, that was to be removed and thrown in a pile with the ashes on the east side of the altar. The priest was then to tear the bird open by its wings, but be careful not to sever it, and then to burn the animal on the altar as a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. So there you go. That's how you make your burnt offerings according to Leviticus, and that is chapter 1. Applications are going to be a little bit tough for Leviticus, but I'm trying my best, so bear with me here. Our application for today. God called Moses to the tent of meeting to give him all these instructions, and then Moses was supposed to take them and communicate them to the people. God communicated through a representative, right? In this case, Moses. He did this many times in the Bible. The Israelites were expected to heed the words of God as delivered through his representative. They did not have the option to ignore them and then just to try to serve God another way, a way that they felt was better. And the same is true for the people of God today. God communicated his will through Jesus and through his inspired representatives, the writers of the scriptures who were inspired by the Holy Spirit. God expects us to learn how to serve him by heeding his words as delivered by his messengers. We can't claim to serve God while discarding or ignoring the instructions that he's delivered to us. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are trying that today, saying, oh yes, I'm a Christian. Oh yes, I'm a follower. Oh yes, I'm a believer. But, all that stuff in the Bible I don't like, I'm not really going to follow that, but I still am going to claim the name of Christ. You don't get to do that.